66.
6640.
Your future lies in 6640.
66 books by 40 authors, and yet we now discover it's an integrated message system from outside our time domain.
Welcome to 6640, the ministry outreach of Koinonia House and Koinonia Institute. Today's Bible teacher is Dr. Chuck Missler, connecting the Bible to your life and the world around you. In today's study, Dr. Missler begins his teaching on the book of 1 Kings, chapters 15 and 16.
We'll have 8 sessions covering the book of 1 Kings. We're in session 6. So the next 2 sessions will complete the 1 Kings. We'll go right from 1 Kings into 2 Kings for those of you that are studying ahead. For those, we're going to be in chapters 15 and 16, the parallel passage in 2 Chronicles 11 to 28 for those of you that are doubling it up there. But 1 Kings, chapters 15 and 16. Now, you may recall, we're working our way through just the top group of kings. There's many more to go. There's 20 altogether in both cases. The northern kingdom goes from bad to worse, but the southern kingdom will have a few winners, and we'll take a look at that. But we had Rehoboam, Jeroboam in chapter 14. Now, what we're going to look at now is 2 of the main kings in Judah, Abijam and Asa, and Nadab and Baasha in the north in chapter 15. So let's just jump right in. Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, reigned Abijam over Judah. The word order is not the way we would express it, but obviously Abijam is the son of the former king. 3 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. Now, it's probable, by the way, that Tamar, the daughter of Absalom, had been married to Uriel, and Maacah was their daughter, for just a little background. But that's... And he walked in all the sins of his father. Boy, that phrase is going to be so repetitive. They get worse and worse. He walked in all the sins of his father, which he had done before him, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as the heart of David, his father. When he says father there, it's obviously grandfather, but in any case, nevertheless, for David's sake did the Lord his God give him a lamp in Jerusalem to set up his son after him and to establish Jerusalem, because David did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, turned not aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, save only the matter of Uriah the Hittite. And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of their life. Now, there is a more fuller account of Abijam, by the way, in 2 Chronicles 13, but see, God's patience with Abijah was because of his promises to David, more so than Abijah's own character is the point that's being brought through here. So the wars between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continued throughout Abijah's lifetime. And now the acts of Abijam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? And there was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. We keep running that phrase, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles? Don't assume that those are the book of Chronicles, the book that we call the Chronicles. They're an abridgment, I'm sure. What they're probably really referring to, scholars believe, are archives in the temple that have been lost. Anyway, yeah. And there was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. And Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa, his son, reigned in his stead. And the 20th year of Jeroboam, the king of Israel, reigned Asa over Judah. And 41 years reigned he in Jerusalem. Notice all these southern kings reigned in Jerusalem. They don't move around and so forth, because that's where God put his name. And his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And Asa did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, as did David's father. That phrase is a refreshing change. We'll only see it a few times. But Asa doesn't mean he did everything right. He's got some problems too, but he did, in general, he did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, as David did his father. He took away the Sodomites out of the land, and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. And also, get this, even his reforms even nail his mother here. And also Maacah, his mother, even her, he removed from being queen because she had made an idol in a grove. And Asa destroyed her idol and burnt it by the brook Kidron. But the high places were not removed. Nevertheless, Asa's heart was perfect with the Lord in all his days. In other words, he didn't do it thoroughly. There's still some loose ends, but his heart was right with the Lord all his days. That's good news. And see, 8 of the 19 kings in the southern kingdom in Judah were evaluated by God as being good. 8 of the 19. 20 out of 20 are bad news in the northern kingdom, but 8 out of the 19 were good guys in God's own. And 4 of those kings led Judah in religious reforms to restore the nation into Mosaic Judaism after the Torah and so forth. Now, Asa is the first of the good guys, and he's the first reformer. And he became king just before Jeroboam's reign in Israel ended. Just before, so they overlap a little bit with Jeroboam in the north and Asa in the south. Now, Mecca, by the way, was his grandmother, not mother. You understand that father, mother, and sons and daughters, in the Hebrew, they don't have the term grand. In other words, a son can be a grandson or great-grandson. It just means descendant, really. We use the term son as an immediate following, but that's not the way so understand when the translators may not pick up on that. And he brought in the things which his father had dedicated, and the things which himself had dedicated into the house of the Lord, silver and gold and vessels. And there was war between Asa and Baasha, the king of Israel, all their days. And Baasha, the king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might not suffer any to go out or come in to Asa, the king of Judah. Now, obviously, we're getting introduced to another guy here. This Baasha is in the north, and Asa enjoyed about 10 years of peace after Jeroboam's defeat by Abijam. But this was wisely and energetically spent in making religious reforms, as we've seen there. But now Baasha, the king of Israel, he's one of the northern guys. He built Ramah, and in the 15th year of his reign, it turns out, and he built a strong fortress at Ramah, which was near Gibeah. It's only about 4 miles north of Jerusalem, so it's a fort representing the southern part of the northern kingdom. And he's afraid that lest his subjects leave his kingdom and go to worship to the fathers, he's going to build sort of an iron curtain kind of arrangement here. That's what he's going to try to do. But Asa took the silver and gold that were left in the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasure of the king's house and delivered them into the hand of his servants, and the king Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Tabrimon, the son of Hezion, the king of Syria, that dwelt at Damascus. So Asa is going to take some riches up to Damascus to bribe this king to neutralize his northern enemy here. He says, "There's a league between me and thee, and between my father and thy father. Behold, I have sent unto thee a present of silver and gold. Come and break thy league with Baasha, the king of Israel, that he may depart from me." So Ben-Hadad hearkened unto the king Asa, and sent the captains of the host which he had against the cities of Israel, that is the northern king, and smote Eon and Dan and another unpronounceable one, Abel Beth Makkah, I guess, and all Kinnereth and all the land. Now Kinnereth, that's the old name for the Sea of Galilee, what we know as the Sea of Galilee. But anyway, and all the land of Naphtali, so up the north. So he gains in effect an ally in Damascus. He purchased some friendship here. It came to pass when Baasha heard thereof, he left off building of Ramah and dwelt in Tirzah. So he goes back up north to this current capital, and then King Asa made a proclamation throughout all Judah. None was exempted. They took away the stones of Ramah and the timber thereof, wherewith Baasha had builded. And King Asa built with them Geba of Benjamin and Mitzpah. So he bribes the Syrians to neutralize Baasha. So Baasha backs off his big construction project to make this big fort at Ramah. Asa takes all the materials and uses them for his fortifications. And all the rest of the acts of Asa and all his might and all that he did and all the cities which he built, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? And nevertheless, in the time of his old age, he was diseased in his feet. And Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his stead. So it moves on. And, okay. Now, we learn from 2 Chronicles, by the way, that the prophet Hanani had rebuked Asa for this very clever strategy with the Syrians, it would seem, but for getting help from the Syrians, or actually Aram as it was known in those days, the prophet Hannai rebukes Asa. That's not here, that's in the Chronicles, points that. And Asa resented the rebuke and threw the prophet in prison in 2 Chronicles 16. So, see, it may be that Asa's successes against Egypt and Israel had made him a little too proud, a little too cocky. He got too sure of himself. So he was not perfect, but he is deemed by the text as one of the good guys. And so, okay, we now come to the next guy. And Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel in the 2nd year of Asa, the king of Judah, and he reigned over Israel 2 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, and he walked in the way of his father, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin. No surprise. And Baasha, the son of Ahijah, the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Baasha smote him. And this is in other words, we're doing a flashback here as we look at the north. At Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines, and Nadab and all Israel laid siege to Gibbethon. Even in the 3rd year of Asa, the king of Judah, did Baasha slay him and reigned in his stead. And when it came to pass when he reigned that he smote all the house of Jeroboam, he left not to Jeroboam any that breathed, until he had destroyed him, according unto the saying of the Lord, which he spake by his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. Because of the sins of Jeroboam, which he sinned, and which he made Israel to sin, by his provocation wherewith he provoked the Lord God of Israel to anger. Now the rest of the acts of Nadab and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? And there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. And we've had a glimpse of that in the previous rundown here. In the 3rd year of Asa, the king of Judah, began Baasha, the king of Ahijah, to reign over all Israel in Tirzah, 24 years. See, the capital was Shechem originally. It's Tirzah. We're not through. We're going to have a very powerful king make Samaria the primary capital. He's going to do a big job of that. But at the moment, Tirzah, it's a very, very lovely place. I think I've got some background on that might be useful to give you a perspective of this. I'll come to it when I come to it. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the way of Jeroboam, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel sin. So each king gets worse and worse. So we're now in 1 Kings 16, and we saw Abijam and Asa in Judah, and Nadab and Baasha in the northern kingdom in the previous chapter. And now we're going to take a look at 3 more kings in the north: Elah, Zimri, and Omri. And it's a pretty bloody story. Anyway, then the word of the Lord came to Jehu, the son of Hanani, against Baasha. Now notice, by the way, that this is not king. Don't confuse this prophet Jehu with the king Jehu. They're different guys. And he's the son of a prophet. Hanani was the guy that had rebuked Asa against Baasha. Anyway, saying the word of the Lord came to Jehu: For as much as I exalted thee out of the dust and made thee prince over my people Israel, and thou hast walked in the way of Jeroboam and hast made my people Israel to sin, to provoke me to anger with their sins, behold, I will take away the posterity of Baasha and the posterity of his house, and will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Him that dieth of Baasha in the city shall the dogs eat, and him that dieth in his fields shall the fowls of the air eat. Now the rest of the acts of Baasha and what he did and his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? So Baasha slept with his fathers and was buried in Tirzah, and Elah his son reigned in his stead. Bad news. Bad news. These are almost the same words that were used to describe Baasha's future judgment that would be given to him by the prophet Ahijah. And, the words described to Baasha are almost the same words that were given by Ahijah to the prophet Jeroboam, if you recall. And they're going to be the same that Elijah is going to give to Ahab later on in chapter 21, in one of our later sessions. And what's amazing is that there's no learning taking place. Learning is defined as the modification of behavior, and these kings don't learn by the kings that precede them. They're completely blind to spiritual matters. So Baasha commits the same sins as his father did. So the level of apostasy is really grown very deep. That's the net of all this. And so Elah, this guy's the successor here, is going to be just a duplicate of his father. On the basis of verse 7, by the way, we can infer that Jehu continued through Elah's reign also. Scripture says, Blessed is the king whose prophet is his counselor, but cursed is he who heeds not his prophet. And boy, this chronicle sure demonstrates that. And okay, let's talk about Elah's evil reign here. The 26th year of Asa, the king of Judah, in the south, began Elah, the son of Baasha, to reign over Israel. That's in the north. In Tirzah, 2 years. Short reign, by the way. You think that's short? Look what Zimri's going to do. His servant Zimri, captain of half his chariots, conspired against him, as he was in Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, the steward of his house in Tirzah. Zimri went in and smote him and killed him in the 27th year of Asa, the king of Judah, and he reigned in his stead. So Zimri just took over. He murdered him while he was in a drunken stupor. Kind of a ignominious end. He was murdered while being drunk. Elah and Belshazzar of Babylon have that in common, I guess, in some respects. But it came to pass, when he began to reign, as soon as he sat on the throne, that he slew all the house of Baasha, and he left him not one that pisseth against the wall, neither of his kinsfolks nor of his friends. Thus did Zimri destroy all the house of Baasha, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake against Jehu the prophet. So this rough guy, he's a military commander, murders the king, takes over, slaughters all the other pretenders to the throne. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? You know how long his reign was? 1 week. 7 days. Shortest of any Israelite king. For all the sins of Baasha and the sins of Elah, his son, by which they sinned and by which they made Israel sin and provoking the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities. Now the rest of the acts of Elah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of Israel? In the 27th year of Asa, the king of Judah, did Zimri reign 7 days in Tirzah. And the people were encamped against Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines, and the people that were encamped heard say, Zimri had conspired and hath slain the king. Wherefore all Israel made Omri, the captain of the host, king over Israel, that day in the camp. Omri's a popular guy. Zimri's a pretender. When they heard he just took over, they expressed their own popular view on Omri, and we're going to learn about it. He's quite a guy. Omri went up from Gibbethon, and all Israel with him, and they besieged Tirzah. And it came to pass, when Zimri saw that the city was taken, that he went into the palace of the king's house, and burnt the king's house over him with fire, and died. In other words, he burned the whole place down. Wouldn't let them have any of it. For his sins, this is the first suicide bomber, I guess. Huh? For his sins, which he sinned in doing evil in the sight of the Lord and walking in the way of Jeroboam, in his sins did he make Israel to sin. See, Zimri was not an acceptable candidate, and so the people turned to Omri, and so that's pretty straightforward. And they appeared at the city walls almost immediately, but they've been marching for 4 or 5 days. That's the length of his control. And so he did as much damage as he could, killed himself. And his death resulted ultimately from his own sins, of course. And so now all the acts of Zimri and his treason that he wrought, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? Then were the people of Israel divided into 2 parts. Half the people followed Tibni, the son of Ginath, to make him king, and half followed Omri. So here we have the nation split already in 2, but the northern kingdom is under threat of being split into 2, if you will. Omri is going to eventually overpower Timni. His army support proves decisive, and Timni will die, probably executed by his oppressors. All the people that followed Omri prevailed against the people that followed Timni, the son of Ginath. So Timni died, and Omri reigned. In the 31st year of Asa, the king of Judah, began Omri to reign over Israel 12 years. 6 years he reigned in Tirzah. So there's a whole series of assassinations. This is all about 886 BC. And led, of course, to the crowning of Omri, who was the ranking army officer, and he's capable and he's aggressive, and he quickly stabilized the nation. He's the guy that built and fortified Samaria as his capital. Remember, it was Shechem and Tirzah, which is a beautiful place, by the way, but then to Samaria. And it so impressed the Assyrians, by the way, that 100 years later, Israel was known by them as the land of Omri. So he really put his imprint on the place. The Bible doesn't tell us much about his reign, but archaeology does. They discovered a thing called the Moabite stone in 1898. And it has the reports how Omri conquered the Moab and forced it to pay tribute to Israel. And also his marriage, the marriage of his son, Ahab, to the Phoenician princess Jezebel will be a topic of our subsequent chapters. That's a major part of the Bible, and it's even alluded to as an idiom in the book of Revelation. We'll talk about that when we get there. But the fact that his son marries a Phoenician princess implies that Omri apparently had developed good relationships with Phoenicia, valuable trading ally. And it's very likely that much of the wealth of Samaria, the Samaria is the capital, but it becomes idiomatic for the northern kingdom. So the archaeological expeditions indicates that a lot of this had its roots in diplomacy and statecraft of Omri. But the scripture doesn't focus on the material things or the political affairs. It focuses on the religious and moral dimensions of life. And so in the 31st year, Omri began to reign over Israel and so forth. He had a contested reign for 4 years with Tibni, but then the date in this verse is entered on the sole and peaceful reign of 8 years, if you will. In the first 6 years of his reign, he was at Tirzah, but then he moves to the new capital, Samaria. And that's what this is going to describe. He bought the hill Samaria from Shemer for 2 talents of silver. Don't knock that. That's probably about $4,000 or $5,000 in our money. And built on the hill and called the name of the city which he built after the name of Shemer, the owner of the hill, Samaria. Samaria is a variant spelling of Shemer, of the owner in effect. But Omri wrought evil in the eyes of the Lord and did worse than all that were before him. They keep raising the mark here, don't they? Now this, Samaria is about 7 miles west of Tirzah. The palace of Tirzah is in ruins because obviously it was burned down. So he selected this as the site of his royal residence, both for pleasure and advantage. There's a center of an amphitheater of mountains, about 7 miles from Shechem. It rises an oblong hill with steep yet accessible sides, a long flat top extending east and west, raising about 500 to 600 feet above the valley. The Assyrian scripture calls it Beth Kumri, or the house of Omri, if you will. Now, he probably initially just built it as a palatial residence, but it became the capital instead of Shechem. It's sort of like Versailles instead of Paris, or Windsor instead of London kind of thing. It becomes the primary capital. So it's probably an admirable choice in many respects. Strong, beautiful, and so forth. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence that Samaria was built by very skillful craftsmen, and it dominated the north-south trade routes, and also is apparently almost impregnable as a stronghold against alien attacks because of this elevated position. And so Omri is probably the strongest ruler of the northern kingdom up to this time. Well, let's move on. Verse 26. And he walked in all the way of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin, to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities. You know, it's amazing how their material wealth and prosperity and their military successes blind them to the predicament spiritually. And we got to think very hard about that in terms of our own country. We're prosperous, we're strong, we're powerful, but where are we spiritually? That's a scary issue to really come to terms with. Now, the rest of the acts of Omri which he did, and the might that he showed, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the king of Israel? And Omri slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab, his son, reigned in his stead. Now, Ahab and his exploits are going to occupy us for a number of chapters forthcoming. In the 38th year of Asa, the king of Judah, began Ahab, the son of Omri, to reign over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord above all that were before him. Each one of these guys sets a new record. How angry can you get God? I don't know. Let me show you. It came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, the king of the Sidonians, and he went and served Baal and worshipped him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. This is going to be a very, very major element in the history of Israel. Worse than all before. As a military and political leader, he gets pretty good marks. He was effective in defeating Israel's Syrian enemies. He joined in a coalition army that halted the invasion of the great Assyrian force under Shalmaneser III. And he maintained the borders of his own land. The Assyrian records tell us that Ahab was able to contribute 2,000 chariots, those are like tanks in the ancient warfare, to a coalition army, as well as some 10,000 foot soldiers. Economically, they also prospered. The Phoenician alliance, because he married Jezebel and so forth, meant that the sea trade routes were open to landlocked Israel. And the great ivory house that Ahab built for himself, 1 Kings 22, we'll talk about that, testifies to his posterity. But at the same time, this alliance with the Phoenicians and marrying the Jezebel brings, she wasn't just a Baal worshiper, she was committed to get everybody to worship Baal. And she really is extremely aggressive, extremely powerful in her own right. So this is, she's not satisfied with coexistence. She wants Baal worship to replace any worship of Jehovah, or Yahweh, or Jehovah, or however you want to pronounce it. And she not only slaughtered the Hebrew prophets, that'll be occurring in chapter 18, she also imported hundreds of prophets of Baal to establish worship centers for this pagan deity. And so it is such a major event that Jesus himself makes reference to it in the letter to Thyatira in Revelation chapter 2. And you won't understand that letter unless you really understand what's going to transpire later with Jezebel and Ahab and Naboth's vineyard and all that business, which we'll get to, of course. But so Jezebel and King Ahab go about imposing this entire system on Israel and aggressively seek to blot out any worship of Jehovah. So you can tell what's coming here, huh?
You've been listening to 6640, the ministry outreach of Koinonia House and Koinonia Institute. Today's Bible teacher was Dr. Chuck Missler, teaching through the book of 1 Kings. For a complete listing of resources available, please visit khouse.org. You can also call us on 1-800-KHOUSE-1. To learn more about Koinonia Institute, visit koinoniainstitute.org. Thank you for listening to 6640 and for your continued prayerful support of this ministry. Until next time, as we continue this series, may God bless you with the knowledge of His Son, Jesus Christ, as you study His Word.